Can you hear me? How do I come in? All right. Let's see here. So we'll give it another minute or two before we get started. Wait for some stragglers to join us. Hello, Jessica. John. How can I learn to chant while meditating? Well, at least in my tradition, you're not really supposed to chant while you're meditating. Chanting can kind of put you into a bit of a what would you call it? A bit of a flow state, right? But it's technically not meditation. It can be a preparation for meditation. All right. Let's get started. So we'll start out the whole thing by paying respects to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So, as we have been doing, I'm going to start out with some chanting. And what I'm going to chant tonight, I'm going to do the Pali and then the English. This is going to be the introduction to our topic. Our topic today is Salayatana, the sixth sense basis. Everything related to the six senses. So, of course, for this, we should start at the beginning. The Buddha's third teaching, which is the fire sermon. First was Dhammacakkappavattana, where the Buddha set the wheel of Dhamma in motion. Second is the Anatta Lakkhana, which the Buddha first discourse on not self. And then the third is the Adittipariyaya Sutta, the fire sermon. So we'll begin. And I see your question, Victoria. We can answer them in a bit, but we'll start for this first. I've never chanted this before, so let's see how this is going to go. This is good training. Tatrast. Wait, no. Where am I at here? Yeah. Tatra sudang bhagava gayayang viharati gayayi se sading bhikkhu sahasena tatra ko bhagava bhikkhu amantesi sabbang bhikkave aditang kincha bhikkave sabbang aditang Chakung bhikkhave aditang rupa adita chakku vinyanang aditang chakku sampasso aditto yadidang chakku sampassa pacchaya upajjati vedayitang sukkang va dukkang va adukkang asukkang va tangpi aditang kena aditang ragagina dosagina Mohagina aditang jatiya jaraya maranena. This sounds familiar if you were on the stream this morning. Sokehi paridevehi dukehi domanasehi upayasehi adittanti vadami. And so we'll do the English. And there on Gaia head, the Sublime One lived together with 1,000 bhikkhus. And there the Sublime One addressed them, the bhikkhus. All things, bhikkhus, are on fire. And what, bhikkhus, are all these things which are on fire? The I, bhikkhus, is on fire. Forms are on fire. I consciousness is on fire. Eye contact is on fire. And whatever sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, which originates in dependence on eye contact, that also is on fire. And with what are these on fire? With the fire of passion, I say, with the fire of hatred, with the fire of delusion, with birth, old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, they are on fire. So the I, right, is on fire, not because the eye sees things. No, the eye is on fire because of greed, hatred, and delusion. That's why the eye is on fire. The eye is just a fleshy ball that does its job, right? But we attach to sights through the eyes, or we reverse to sights through the eyes, and therefore it is on fire. Sotang bhikkhave aditang saddha aditta sota vinyanang aditang soto sampassa sampasso aditto yadidang sota sampassa paccaya upapajjati vedayatang sukkang va dukkang asukang va yatampi aditang kena aditang ragagina dosagina mogagina aditang jatiya jaraya maranena sokehi paridevehi dukkehi domanasehi upayasehi adittan vadami. So we're going to hear it's the same thing, right? This is going to be the same words, but now with the ear. The ear, bhikkhus, is on fire. Sounds are on fire. Ear consciousness is on fire. Ear contact is on fire. And whatever sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, which originates in dependence on ear contact. So for those of you who aren't familiar, let me go over when you hear ear consciousness or eye consciousness. This is actually how the Buddha describes consciousness. He's asked about consciousness. What is consciousness? His description of consciousness is eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, right? Tactile consciousness, mind consciousness. His description of consciousness is connected with the six senses, right? So that's what this means. That his connection, it's connected with the six senses, right? Now, contact, See, I'm going a little bit deep. So if you're confused, it's okay. But contact is the meeting of three things. So the eye consciousness, and a form. So this computer, this webcam that I'm looking at, the meeting of the three is eye contact. Eye consciousness, webcam, eye contact. So that's what this means. So essentially, all of the Buddha is not giving out. The Buddha is not giving any aspect of the aspect of seeing that is not on fire. That's the important way to understand it. So ganang bhikkhave aditang ganda. So now you're learning the Pali for eye, ears, nose, tongue today, right? Yeah. Ganda aditta gana vinyanang adittang gana sampasso aditto yadidang gana sampassa pacchaya upapajjati vediyatang sukkang va dukkang va tampiya dittang kena dittang raggagina dosagina moagina dittang jatiya Jaraya maranena sokehi paradevehi dukkehi domanasehi upayasehi adittang vadami. So, do we understand? So you guys are learning Pali, because it's the same thing. The nose bhikkhu is on fire. Smells are on fire. Nose consciousness, nose contact, and whatever sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, which originates in dependence on those, is also on fire. And what are these on fire? And with what are these on fire? What? The fire of passion, the fire of hatred, the fire of delusion. With birth, old age, death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, they are on fire. And so I'm gonna not go through all of this Pali because it is a lot of repetition, but we'll understand. So jiva bhikkhave aditta, rasa bhikkhave aditta. The tongue is on fire, tastes are on fire. Kayo bhikkhave aditta, pottabba aditta. The body is on fire, touch is on fire. Mano bhikkhave aditto, dhamma aditta. The mind is on fire. Mental objects are on fire. So now we'll go to Evang pasang bhikkhave suttava arya savako chakku sasmin pi nabindati rupe su pi nabindati chakku vinyane pi nabindati chakku sampasse pi nabindati yadidang chakku sampassa pacchaya upajjati vedyatang sukkang va adukkang va. And we know these things. Where are the firefighters? B. Moore says, yes, the firefighter is you. Only you can put out your own fire, as we're going to get to. So Buddha says, perceiving that the senses are on fire, the all. We're going to go over that. I'm going to show you. Anytime I like to teach, I always like to have it based on the suttas so that you can see. It's not something that I'm making up. It's something that the Buddha has put down in the suttas, right? So it's very important that we understand this. Perceiving this, bhikkhus, the learned and noble disciple becomes disenchanted with the eye, with forms, with eye consciousness, with eye contact, and whatever sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, which originates in dependence on eye contact. With that also he becomes disenchanted. Nibbida, nibbindati, disenchantment. So, oh man, I'm always chasing, just like a person with their head on fire. I'm always chasing after all the pleasures of the senses, my eyes and my ears, all these wonderful, pleasurable experiences. I'm always chasing after. I'm getting tired of this. It's not as cut out. It's not as cut up as it used to be. It's not that good as it used to be, right? And so perceive, it's the same thing. Perceiving this, the disenchanted with the ear, disenchanted with the nose, disenchanted with the tongue, disenchanted with the body, and disenchanted with the mind. And then we come to the end. Nibindang viraji virajati viraga vimuchati. Some of the most beautiful 3 Pali words. Nibindati viraga vimutti. Disenchantment, dispassion, freedom. So wonderful. Vimuttasming vimuttanti jnana hoti kina jati visutang brahmacharyang. Oh, this is the victory cry of the Arahants. Katang karaniyang na parang ittatayati pajanati. Imasming cha panaveya karanasming bhanamane tassa bhikkhu sahasasa anupadaya asavehi chitanti vimuchisming. And through this disenchantment, the noble disciple becomes dispassionate. And by the absence of passion, free. And when free, aware of that freedom. Aware, this is the victory cry of the Arahants. When you become awakened, this is what you know, unshakably. This is what you announce, right? In the days of the Buddha, when especially in the early days, when everybody and their mother was becoming awakened. And I'm talking about the early days of the Buddha's dispensation, right? Like the first couple of years when people were just becoming awakened like flies because that was their condition. That was their karma. They were ready for it, right? All they needed was the Buddha to give them a few words, and boom, they were awakened. So this is this you could all be sitting down, and then people announce the victory cry of the Arahant, and then you know that they've become awakened, right? So, and that is, rebirth is exhausted. The holy life has been lived. What has to be done has been done. There is nothing more for me to do in this existence, in this world. With this exposition being delivered, the minds of 1,000 bhikkhus without attachment became free from defilement. See? Just like that. And again, this is a confusion, right? Because the confusion is you think, oh man, if only I was around in the time of the Buddha, then all I would have to do is listen to one sutta and then I'm awakened. No. That's misunderstanding, right? The people who are becoming awakened now put in the work, put in the practice in many previous lives for them to be at this time of the Buddha, and then boom. All you need is a couple teachings from the Buddha and you're done, right? So this is important, right? This is the topic for today. This is Salayatana, the 6 sense bases. Right? The Buddha calls this the all. Why do you think he calls this the all? Let's get people actively involved here. I see 10 people on the chat. So why do you think, now if you know the answer, if you've been around, if you know the answer, then allow other people to try to give an answer. Why does the Buddha call the 6 senses the all? Ah, boo, you're all quiet. All right, well, here. Yeah, very good, B. Moore. Yep. It is all we have to precise the world around us. It's all we have to Perceive, yes, perceive the world around us. Exactly. So I posted the sutta there. At Savati, bhikkhus, I will teach you the all. Listen to that. And what bhikkhus is the all? The eye and forms, the ear and sounds, the nose and odors, the tongue and taste, the body and tactile objects, the mind and mental phenomena. If anyone, bhikkhus, should speak thus, having rejected this all, I shall make known another all. That would be merely empty boast on his part. If he were questioned, he would not be able to reply, and further, he would meet with vexation. For what reason? Because that would not be within his domain. We, as beings in existence, right, we can only perceive, we can only understand through these six senses, as faulty as they are, right? This is our base of work, right? This is where we develop our understanding, where we start to see things as they are, right? As we begin the practice, as we start developing our meditation practice and our contemplative practice, we start to understand how the six senses is very impactful, right? Because if we didn't have senses, well, then there wouldn't be any pleasures to experience. Right? If we didn't have senses, there wouldn't be any desires to go after things, because we couldn't experience anything. And so the all is a very important And so it's so important that the Buddha wants us to understand, right? So this is one of the misconceptions of Buddhism, that the Buddha says that you shouldn't experience anything pleasant, right? You should push away everything pleasant. The Buddha actually never says that. The Buddha says you should know them. You should know them. That's important. You should know the gratification, the danger, and the escape. When you know them, then what arises? Nibbida. You naturally start to you don't have to force yourself to let go of them. But when you know them, you see it as it is, then you naturally let go. It's not a fight. Up until that point, it's a fight. So full understanding. Bhikkhus, without directly knowing and fully understanding the all, without developing dispassion toward it and abandoning it, one is incapable of destroying suffering. Right there. Right? And what bhikkhus is that all, without directly knowing and fully understanding which, without developing dispassion towards, and which abandoning which one is incapable of destroying suffering? Without knowing and fully understanding the I, without developing dispassion and abandoning towards it, one is incapable of destroying suffering. And it goes through eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Because by directly knowing and fully understanding the all, by developing dispassion towards it and abandoning it, one is capable of destroying suffering. So the Buddha explains it to us. This is the all. You should know the all. You should investigate the all. You should understand the all. All right, I developed an interesting I guess you would call it maybe like a satipatthana practice. At the monastery years ago, the one winter, I had just come in from shoveling snow, and I was sitting in the Sangha hall with my hot chocolate, And, because being out in the snow, it becomes very, doing a lot of work, your mind becomes very calm. So I was very calm, very tranquil, not a lot of stuff going through my mind. And I was sitting in the couch, I was sitting in the chair in the Sangha hall, and I was looking at my hot chocolate. And then I started to notice the senses. I started to notice the smell of the hot chocolate, right? I started to notice it was very pleasing to the eye because it looked like the way the foam was, it looked like a universe, like a mini galaxy, like a mini universe. So this is why I nicknamed this contemplation universe in a cup, right? So my eye, it was pleasant to the eye, pleasant to the nose. When I tasted, pleasant, right? But of course, there was some other, my body, there was some soreness, right? Some unpleasant, right? So I was just there, just contemplating, just observing and investigating all of the six senses. My mind was quiet and peaceful. But then there was a stirring in the mind when I tasted the hot chocolate and it was very pleasant, right? So something like this is a very basic tool in investigating the six senses, right? You could even do this when you're doing things like, after years of practice, after I got my weight loss surgery and I became an exercise nut, I had been meditating for a bunch of years. And so I started bringing my mindfulness into when I was running and when I was doing all kinds of activities, what was going on with my six senses, right? The contemplation of that, the feeling, that all of these things, right? So you can investigate the six senses no matter what you're doing. Because no matter what you're doing, unless you're unconscious, right, you need consciousness. So you have to be awake, right? If you're awake, you can investigate your experience through the senses. This is such an important thing. Is in Satipatthana, in the fourth Satipatthana, Dhamma Nupasi Viharati. Dhamma is principles, and one of those principles that the Buddha uses as the basis for the foundation for mindfulness is the six senses, salayatana, right? So the six senses are a strong basis for the development of mindfulness. And then once you have investigated and you've developed, then it is to abandon. Where are we at here? What did I do? Bhikkhus, I will teach you the Dhamma for abandoning all. Listen to that. And what, bhikkhus, is the Dhamma for abandoning all? The I is to be abandoned. Forms are to be abandoned. Eye consciousness, eye contact is to be abandoned. Whatever feeling arising with these, whether pleasant or painful or neutral, is to be abandoned. The ear, nose, tongue, body, mind is to be abandoned. Right? This is the Dhamma for abandoning all. Why abandon all? Because to be born, to have this body, is suffering. An awakened being does not wish to be born again in samsara. Right? So the awakened being lets go. The awakened being abandons. I do not need my craving for sensual pleasures, my craving for pleasant experiences has been extinguished. Therefore, I don't need another body to keep going. I don't need another existence to keep going experiencing these sensual pleasures because my craving for them has been eradicated. So I let go, I let down, let be, abandon these senses, abandon this body, be done with it, and so done with the cycle of samsara. And so the Buddha, you see, I can rapid fire these things. The Buddha says, because of grasping, mendicants, when what exists because of grasping what, do pleasure and pain arise in oneself. Mendicants, when there's an I, because of grasping at the I, pleasure and pain arise in oneself. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Because of these, when these arise, what else arises? Pleasure and pain. And the Buddha says, what do you think, mendicants? Is the I permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. But if it's impermanent, is it suffering or happiness? Dukkha or sukha? Adukkha, or is it dukkha, sukha, or adukkha, asukha? Which means suffering, happiness, or neither suffering nor happiness. It is suffering, sir. By not grasping what's impermanent, suffering, imperishable, would pleasure and pain arise in oneself? No, sir. Right? By not clinging, by not grasping, there is no suffering. Right? This is very important to understand this. Seeing this, a learned noble disciple grows disillusioned with the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. Being disillusioned, desire fades away. When desire fades away, they are freed. So we've seen that already, right? All right, so I see some questions. So well, let's move over to questions because I've been diatribing enough. So we'll move over to some questions here. The first question by Victoria is a very interesting and disputatious one. What are your thoughts on veganism and Buddhism? Are you vegan? So my thoughts is that the Buddha basically the Buddha gave this each person the choice to if they want to do this or not. So if you feel like it should be part of your practice, then you can practice it. If you don't really feel it's part of your practice, then you don't need to practice it. So this is the Buddha's very wise understanding of the reality of things. So the Buddha did not say one way or the other. He left it up to each individual person, whether they wish to be vegetarian or vegan. And as for me, am I vegan? I'm anything. Whatever people want to, if people are giving me food, I'm whatever they are. If they're vegan, I'm vegan. If they eat meat, then I eat meat. If they eat vegetarian, I eat vegetarian. If they eat gluten-free, I eat gluten-free. That's the way it is. So before we tend to not get too involved in our community having too much of a discussion on these things because it can be very disputatious. But that's pretty much my thoughts on it right there. It's an individual choice, which each person can decide whether they want that to be part of their practice or not. Victoria asks, is it okay to do things you enjoy and love and pleasure, providing no one gets hurt? Well, Victoria, actually, that's very well put, because that is exactly how for the average person, for the lay person, this is exactly what it's about, right? Having sila, right? Living by virtuous principles, right? The Buddha says that a lay person is endowed with the five chords of sensual pleasure, right? So for a lay person, there's you shouldn't engage in any sensual pleasures, but you should do it in a skillful way, right? That's what sila is for. That's what following the five precepts are for, right? To live in the world in a skillful way, right? So where is it? Okay, there it is. Do things you enjoy. Sure, fine, right? Providing, but like you say, providing nobody gets hurt. So the way they would say this in the suttas is, if what you are doing is beneficial to yourself and others, then continue to do it. If it's not skillful, if it's harmful or unskillful to yourself and others, then don't do it, right? So, for the average person, they're not going to totally avoid any kind of sensual pleasures in their life, right? Even, as your practice becomes more and more refined, there are pleasurable experiences through like getting into deep states of jhana and things like that. But those are different. Those aren't connected to sensual pleasures. Because those are all of the mind. But even still, those can be attached to. People can wish to be in jhana, right? To escape their dukkha. But just like somebody who takes a drug or drinks alcohol or overeats to escape the dukkha, once it's over, the dukkha comes back, right? So any kind of a desire for escaping away from unpleasant experiences, escaping towards pleasant experiences, this is our craving and our suffering. And so, Risa, essentially, it's the same question. What about the pleasant sound of birds singing, or seeing the leaves change, or a pretty flower? Yeah, nature can be beautiful, right? But also, if you're in the woods, you can get eaten by a bear or a mountain lion. So nature can be unpleasant as well as pleasant. So we can understand this, right? We can reflect. Yeah, there are many things that are pleasant to the eye, pleasant to the ear, pleasant to the nose, right? There are many things that are pleasant. But at the very least, we should try to not attach to them too strongly. Why? Because eventually they're going to cease. The flower is going to die. Those birds are going to go away, right? And then if you really like them, then you suffer because of it. I mean, there's nothing inherently bad in birds singing and leaves changing color. Like that's just existence. That's just what happens. That's the causes and conditions that are arising. Again, it's on fire because of our greed, hatred, and delusion, because of our craving towards it. That's where the fire is. Risa says overeating and Thanksgiving is coming. Yeah. Yep. All right, Reed, have a good night. Sleep well. Be well and sleep well. Because you can't practice while you're sleeping. When you're awake, it's Practice well and be well. But when you sleep, it's sleep well and be well. All right. So it's a quiet one. Yeah, I was actually just going to ask if anybody had any questions related to Buddhism or meditation, because we'll do a little bit of like Q&A and discussion, and then we'll in a little bit, maybe in about 10 minutes, we'll do a guided meditation. So Be More asks, how do I deal with anxiety I feel every time I encounter my own family members on Thanksgiving? Don't go to Thanksgiving. No, just kidding. Well, try to find some common ground with them, or try to find a way of being with them in Thanksgiving that is pleasant. Right? That's what I would say. Man, I don't know what the specifics are, if it's something talking about specific topics, or it's just being around people because maybe they annoy you. Oh, my family's so annoying when I go home. If it's the annoying thing, you can understand, well, this is just how they are. This is their causes and conditions, right? This is my family. That's okay. Right? Well, you can also investigate why. Right? When you're home, use it as a meditative practice. Try to investigate the origin of why that annoyance arises, right? Investigate that. See if you can find the triggers, right? This person did or said this, then my annoyance arose. See if you can use it as practice, right? That's the best thing for it. Like, instead of going into, I got to deal with these people. They're so annoying. They're going to say stupid things. Here's an opportunity for a really good investigation. Because how often am I so agitated, right? Well, maybe you're agitated a lot. I don't know. But this is coming up. Obviously, it seems like there's a strong agitation there. So you can use it as an investigation. Use it as a training. There's a wonderful thing. I can't post it all. But the important thing is to understand what the gratification, the danger, and the escape. This is what the Buddha gives us as a technique to investigate. Right? He says, and this is actually before my enlightenment, when I was still just a bodhisattva, not yet fully enlightened, it occurred to me, what is the gratification, what is the danger, and what is the escape in the case of the six senses? Then it occurred to me, the pleasure and joy that arise in dependence on the six senses, that is the gratification. Right? That the I is impermanent, suffering, and subject to change, that is the danger. The removal and abandonment of desire is the escape. Right? So you can reflect on the drawbacks. Right? You could also try to reflect on the gratification. Maybe there is some pleasantness, or maybe there is some positivity to being with your family, right? Of course, you say constant criticism. That's tough, right? Because what I would try to do at that point then is try to investigate, what do you think the intention behind that constant criticism is? Do they really dislike you and they're trying to annoy you and belittle you and hate you and make you feel little? Or maybe is it in their mind, maybe they're trying to, they're saying it because they care about you and they want to have you be better. I don't know. You have to investigate that. You have to see that. Risa, actually, that's a good point. That's a good thing too. Risa says, "Can you go off somewhere for 10 minutes and be by yourself?" Yeah, like have a little break, right? After eating, that's what people kind of do on Thanksgiving, don't they? They kind of go their own ways. Some people go to the TV, some people go there or whatever. They kind of go their own ways, for a little bit. But yeah, try to use it as a teaching. Try to use it as an investigation. That, to me, in my experience, that's been the best way. Any unpleasant experience that I've had to deal with, to bring up that investigation, to bring up that, okay, I can't avoid this. I'm gonna have to deal with it. But let me make the best of it. Let me try to delve. Let me try to get as much insight as I can from that experience. Isn't the escape being partial to getting away? Yeah, if you want to escape the unskillful, that's a good escape, right? Is it still craving? Yes, but at least it's craving that's leading to the ending of all craving, right? So if you build the desire to want to meditate, and you have a strong desire to meditate, is that bad? It's still craving. It's better than having no craving. I mean, it's not as good as having no craving, but at least the desire to meditate and to follow the Noble Eightfold Path is leading you towards a more skillful direction, towards the ending of all craving. Andre says, "Thank you for the meeting. To find the Brahma Vihara meditation may be easier and more beneficial for beginners than other methods. I have this impression trying out different approaches for myself, that arousing qualities like gratitude, friendliness, and other positive things like that are very pleasant and helpful." Yes, practicing metta and the Brahmi Viharas is a good thing, but in many ways, I would hesitate to kind of think of it as that being like the whole of your practice, right? It's still important to try to practice like mindfulness of breathing. It's still important to practice satipatthana, foundations of mindfulness. And you can actually do with like metta, with the Brahmi Viharas, you can practice, simultaneously. You can practice mindfulness of breathing and satipatthana with the Brahmi Viharas. So they're not like an end all be all of themselves. But if it seems like it's something that's easier for you to start off with, then that's fine. They're very good practices either way. So what is Brahma Vihara? So Brahma is the highest heavens, the highest God, right? The highest deity, Brahma. Hello, Jen. And Vihara means to dwell. So like in the, in Sri Lanka, and I think also in Burmese, they will call their monastery a vihara. Like New Jersey Buddhist Vihara, New York Buddhist Vihara, right? Vihara is a dwelling place, right? So Brahma Vihara means dwelling with Brahma, dwelling in the highest heavens. And so the Buddha says that the four qualities, the four mental qualities of metta, limitless goodwill, karuna, which is compassion, mudita, which is appreciative joy, so in developing happiness in the success and happiness of others, and equanimity, which is having an equanimous mind towards all beings. These four, if your mind is with these four, has these four qualities in your mind, then your mind is as if in heaven. Your mind is as if it's dwelling with Brahma. Right? So that's what Brahma Vihara is. That's what this means. Oh, wait. Oh, Jen's saying goodbye? I didn't notice Jen come in. All right. Bye, Jen. So this is Brahma Viharas. That's what this means. It means when you practice these, when you develop these, your mind is very peaceful and calm, and anger is less to arise. Ah, okay. So Risa says, do you read Torahs? I don't know what a. Do you mean sutra? Maybe sutras like the heart diamond sutra, the lotus sutra as part of your practice. No, I don't. There's 5,000 pages of suttas in the early texts, and is enough for one lifetime. I don't delve into the Mahayana sutras and things like that. What about the three fetters? Secret Spy Records it says, what about the three fetters? No, I've been doing online teaching long enough that I'm pretty good at keeping track of the chat, like on my teachings on Second Life and things like that. So I'm pretty good at keeping track of the chat and making sure I don't miss anybody's questions. Secret Spy Records, did you have a specific question about the three fetters? Oh, there you are. No. No, the first three fetters are cut out when you become a sotapanna, a stream enterer. You can practice the Brahma Viharas before that. Now, it should also be understood that the deeper your insight becomes, the deeper your wisdom, the more you see things as they are, the stronger your Brahma Viharas become. Right? Because you start to see, like, people will say, oh, I have, compassion because I see somebody suffering and it makes me sad. Right? That's a very nice mundane compassion, but that's not like the transcendent Buddha compassion, right? The more you understand the nature of beings and the nature of samsara and all these kind of things, then you have really strong, deep compassion, really strong metta. We're all stuck in this hellhole of samsara. This what I used to call it. A chaotic travesty. We're all stuck in this chaotic travesty. Why am I wasting time hating people? Right? Why am I wasting time not having compassion for people? Right? So the deeper your insight, the deeper your Brahma Viharas go. The three fetters that go are Sakkaya Ditthi, identity view, Silabbata Paramata, which is the attachment to rules and rituals, and Vicikiccha, which is doubt. Those are the three fetters that go when you become a Sotapanna. But we can all practice metta well before that. Jen asks, does your tradition deal with any of these deities like Guanyin, White Green Tara, or Medicine Buddha? No, that's not that's part of Mahayana and Vajrayana. Now you will see. I mean, I've never seen it. Well, I've been to one Thai temple, and they do have kind of like had like a basement, and in the basement they had all kinds of like Hindu deities and all kinds of stuff like that. And I've been told that some Thai temples will have like statues of Guanyin and things like that. But that's not really something that's part of the Theravada tradition in general, no. And even for myself, I don't even really, it's hard to say what my tradition is, because my tradition is I guess the best name for it is Sutavadan, right? My tradition is that the early texts are the early texts are the closest framework we have to the original teachings of the Buddha. So that is the framework through on which I base my practice in my life. And that even cuts away a lot of Theravada. There's a lot of Theravada stuff that I don't really get into, like Abhidhamma, like commentaries, etc. It's just not my thing. I don't discourage people from doing those. There's lots of different practices and lots of different ways. But from my perspective, from my practice, that and even the online community, the Discord Sangha that we run, it's essentially based on the early texts. And now, Reese asked a question. One thing that's important to understand about the early texts, the EBTs, is that they exist both in the Theravada and the Mahayana, and a little bit supposedly in the Vajrayana, I've heard. But so early Buddhist texts are what they call pre-sectarian, meaning that they existed before there was such a thing as Mahayana and Theravada. Right? So, scholars such as Bhante Analayo, Bhante Sujato, they're able to compare like the Chinese Sanskrit Satipatthana and the Pali Theravada Satipatthana, and they're able to see that it's like 97% exactly the same, right? So these early texts are not subject to only like it's not like Theravada is the only thing that has early text, the early text. No, right? Or Mahayana is only later text. Stuff like the Lotus Sutra, etc. All that stuff is later, although some people will say that the Lotus Sutra is fairly early. I don't know the scholarship on that. But in terms of, so in the Pali, they're called the Nikayas, and in the Sanskrit, the Mahayana, they're called the Agamas, right? So most of the Agamas, as far as I know, are not translated into English. So I don't know. You have to kind of learn Sanskrit, right? But so that's that's essentially the tradition. From what I understand, so like even though So a Mahayana temple might have the agamas, but mostly they just collect dust because they're not really practiced, like they're not really expounded, they're not really taught like the Lotus Sutra, like the Heart Sutra, etc., etc. Right? But they're there. And interestingly enough, you could also say the same about much of Theravada. Because if you meet many Theravada monks from many different countries, many have never read the suttas. They know Abhidhamma, right? They know a lot from the commentaries, but they never have most of the, even in Theravada, the early text also collect dust a lot of times. Now, I mean, if you're a Westerner, it like seems like, well, this is, how could they collect dust? This is like the main thing of what we have, right? But we're actually quite lucky. Like, give an example of Sri Lanka, right? In Sri Lanka, there's a tradition of we don't. So think about it this way. So think about it if the Nikayas, the suttas, were only translated into Old English. Could you read Old English? Right? Could you read it? Could you read it with much comprehension? Right? Probably not. I can do it. I was big into medieval stuff and like reading the Lord of the Rings, so I can do it decent enough. But most people could not read the suttas if they were in Old English. Right? So in Sri Lanka, they refused to translate the suttas, the word of the Buddha, into the common Sri Lankan Sinhala vernacular, right? So there are I've met people, a young guy, he said, Bhante, he says, I never even heard the suttas or learned the suttas or was able to read them until I read them in English, right? So we have a very privileged, very wonderful thing that we're born in the West and that and that these were translated into English, because that's not the case in many of the, in many of the Buddhist countries. It's like how Christianity was, Catholicism was 60, 70, 100 years ago, where where the mass and everything was only in Latin, right? Or 1,000 years ago, where the Bible was only in Latin or Greek and the average person couldn't read it, right? So we're very lucky that we have these wonderful English translations, multiple now, right? So Jen asked, did the Buddha even teach about any of those? Are they all later additions? If you go by scholarship, then they're late, yes. Even the Abhidhamma and the commentaries and the Visuddhimagga, that's all late, let alone the Mahayana stuff. Hey, Brenna. Good to see you, Brenna. So, so this is a little, my little sidestep here on this, but this is it. One shouldn't be too, just because I basically don't follow anything from Mahayana and the Vajrayana, doesn't mean that I spend an ounce of time denouncing them or caring. Like I'm not saying the Lotus Sutra is stupid. Why bother doing this? I'm not even gonna wait. I'm not even gonna write anything. The Lotus Sutra's late edition. It's not what the Buddha taught. There's no point in doing that, except for division and being divisive and disputatious. There's no point at all for me to talk about the Mahayana and the Vajrayana. Because I'm not experienced in them. I'm not, in the scholarship like I am in the suttas. And B, because it's not my practice. It's not my tradition. So I don't spend time talking about it. I don't spend time worrying about it one way or the other. I'm just reading here. We should do some guided meditation in a minute, but we'll go through every Dhammapalooza. Oh, somebody said, "What is Dhammapalooza?" So that was a question that was asked that I went over. So Lollapalooza, right, which is it became a very famous music festival, right? But Lollapalooza, the word is this old word that essentially means like a grand festival, right? So it just came to me one day. I think when I had, and the Discord sangha that we were talking, and I was talking about how I wanted to do this 2-hour thing, which is what this is, and I said we'll call it Dhammapalooza. It just came out, just Dhammapalooza. So Dhammapalooza means like a festival, a grand festival of Dhamma, right? So it's like a 2-hour, 2 hours of Dhamma, of everything, right? So we've done chanting, we've done sutta reading, you've heard me talk, right? We've done question and answers. We're going to do guided meditation. So it's like pretty much everything that normally happens in one shot, right? It's like, instead of like getting together for a night of football or a night of whatever, Sex in the City or whatever, I don't know, right? You get together for a night of Dhamma, right? So that's what Dhammapalooza is. And of course, somebody who studied Pali and Sanskrit at Oxford is like, yeah, Pali is great. The rest of us are like, yeah, Pali's tough. Well, it's good to see you, Brenna. Brenna and I go way back to the early days of Bhavana. And she was also one of the first people on the Discord Sangha too in the early days, when there was only like 6 people. All right. So Jen says, is there any info on how the early texts were preserved? So as far as we can tell, the suttas were first written down in Sri Lanka at about the time of Jesus, right? At about, when BC turned to AD. And this was done because monks were dying. There was wars and plagues and famines, and people were dropping like flies. And the monks were like, I think we need to start writing this stuff down. And so what they wrote it down on was palm leaves. Right? So they had palm leaves. And I don't know what the process is. I'm sure science knows. I'm sure scholarship knows. But they had these palm leaves that they wrote things down on. And that's how it kind of, started, right? So tradition and scholarship says that the first time that any of the sutras were written down anywhere was in Sri Lanka around that time. And in many ways, it was from Sri Lanka where essentially the Dhamma went from Sri Lanka to everywhere, pretty much, right? Because what was happening was a lot of strife in India. Like Buddhism in India was starting to die out for many different reasons. And so Sri Lanka, even to this day, you talk to a Sri Lankan person 2,600 years later, they are the protectors of the Dhamma, man. They are like, that is ingrained in their national culture, that they're the protectors of the Dhamma. Right? And in many ways they really are, because if it wasn't for the Sri Lankans of all those years ago, we wouldn't, it wouldn't have spread as it did. So, but that's the traditional, and before that it was oral tradition. And most people have an interesting bias. Most people think that oral tradition is less accurate over time than written tradition is. And if you think that that bias is correct, you're wrong. Oral tradition. My major was anthropology, archaeology. So I knew about studying cultures, and I knew about oral tradition, decades before I became a Buddhist. And you'd be absolutely amazed the amount of things that people can memorize. To this day, there are people, the rare, but you go to Burma, you go to Sri Lanka, you go to Thailand, you'll find a couple people in the country that have all 5,000 pages of the Nikayas memorized. They know it. Right? Now, of course, in the early days, they would actually have, so you would have like this monk over here and all his disciples, they memorize the Anguttara Nikaya, right? And this monk over here and all their disciples memorizes the Samyutta Nikaya, right? So it'd be very rare that one group of monastics has everything memorized. Okay? This is why after the Buddha died, the first council was to bring all the monks from all around India to one spot so that they could codify the teachings, right? Because Buddha had been traveling all over different places and teaching different people in different places, right? Different people were ordained in different places and heard different things, right? That's one of the reasons why there's so much repetition, right? Because the Buddha is very consistent in his teaching, and he's saying it over there, and he's saying it over there, and he's saying it over there. Okay? And so when they had the first council and they brought many, many, thousands of monks together to chant and to codify the teachings, right? And of course, Ananda, tradition states that Ananda was the one who, because he was with the Buddha for 20, 30 some odd years, and he had heard all the teachings, so he chanted, etc. So that's the, so you'd be utterly surprised at how accurate oral tradition actually is. And it's just as inaccurate as writing. Like that, the scholarship shows that they're basically on even footing for how inaccurate they can be. Do I live in the USA? Yes. What city? Right now, New York City. But technically, I don't live anywhere. I'm a nomad currently. I am currently homeless. Okay, friends, how about we do some, it's 9:12. We got to do some guided meditation. Right? You've been listening to me talk. Some of you have been asking questions, which is wonderful. It's very good that you have questions and you like to discuss, because that's what this chat, this is supposed to also be a discussion, right? It really is supposed to be, a community gathering, right? It's not just me talking, right? It's supposed to be us coming together, right? That's really what it's supposed to be. So, Risa, I will answer your question after we do the guided. So let's do some guided meditation. Oh, close your eyes. Let's start bringing our awareness from the external to the internal. We'll start by bringing our awareness to the body and scanning through the body from bottom to top. Doing this scan, doing this practice is good for two reasons. First, it helps in the transition from external activity to internal investigation. And secondly, it allows you to set your body up in a comfortable and stable position for meditating for longer periods. So start out by bringing your awareness to your toes. Bring your awareness to any kind of sensation you can feel there. As you're scanning through the body, if you have trouble connecting with a sensation, you can prompt yourself by asking, what do I see? What do I feel? As you're scanning through, if you feel a little imbalance in your posture or a little pain, now is the time to adjust your posture to address those. Because something small now can turn into something very big later on. It's always best to take extra time in the beginning to make sure your posture is set up well. Bring your awareness to the feet. And ankles. Up through the calves to the knees. Through the thighs. What is the feeling of the thighs pressing against the chair or the cushion? Bring your awareness up to the hips and buttocks. Check to see that your buttocks is evenly distributed on the cushion or the chair. Your hips and pelvis are set up in a way that supports the balance of the upper body. And when you've set your lower body up in a very stable and comfortable position, bring your awareness up through the upper body, the abdomen and chest. Check the balance of your upper body, that you're not slouching forward or leaning backwards. Even if you're sitting in a chair, you want to try to have the upper body with the spine in its normal position, not leaning too far with too much weight on the back of the chair. Try to have your upper body be supported by the lower body. Bring your awareness to your shoulders. Check and see that they're hanging loosely and not tight and scrunched up. Bring your awareness down through your elbows and your hands. Checking to see that they're in a comfortable position and that supports the balance of your upper body, not causing it to lean or forward or backwards. And finally, bring your awareness to the head. Just as the upper body rests on the foundation of the lower, so too does the head rest on the foundation of the upper body. When the foundations are set well, the head rests without effort. The chin parallel to the ground, not slouching forward or backwards. When you're done setting up the body in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. The guided body scan that I just brought you through, when practiced and done by yourself, only needs to be a minute or 2, 5 or 6 minutes, maybe 10. It doesn't have to be this long. But if you practice this and practice it, then before you meditate, then you'll see the benefits. So now bring your awareness to the breath. Try to be aware of this body breathing in and this body breathing out. This body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Your job from here on in is to simply observe and investigate the breath. Watch as the body breathes in and watch as the body breathes out. If the feeling of the air coming in and out of the nostrils as you breathe is prominent for you, you can bring your awareness to that part of your nose with the air coming in and out. If that is hard for you and the rise and fall of the chest is more prominent, then you can bring your awareness there. Or you can simply abide with the basic knowledge and understanding that this body is breathing in and breathing out. As you're following your breath, you will be distracted. Your mind will want to go away somewhere. Whenever that happens, there's no need to get agitated or judgmental. Simply acknowledge that you've been distracted. Practice letting go and then return to the breath. If you become distracted 100 times in a minute, then acknowledge, let go, and return 100 times in a minute. By letting go, we mean that You don't want to get agitated and trying to push the distraction away, nor do you want to get too attached to it and involved in it. Continue thinking about it. You simply want to let it be. Give it no energy. You didn't invite it to come, nor do you need to allow it to stay. Let it go on its way. Always return to the breath. The breath is home, always there waiting for us. Every once in a while, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more calm and tranquil or not? If so, you may begin to notice further characteristics of the breath. Sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. Try to investigate how the breath is changing. Follow as it flows, long and short. Investigate these further characteristics of the breath. The more calm and tranquil your mind is, the more clearly and deeply you can see. And with my digital bell, bring your awareness slowly back to the external, back to the room around you. As you open your eyes and come out of the meditation. And I believe there was at least one question before we went in. Ah, yes. Risa says, what's it like being a monastic in the city? Well, this is actually a wonderful place, right? It's not like in Manhattan, downtown Manhattan. It's actually a pretty quiet place of New York, in Queens. And, with the exception of when I go for a walk or when, the people bring me my food for the day, I'm by myself. It's kind of nice, actually. I've rarely been able to experience something like this. And so it's a very, some of you who've been, who've known me for a while, might see some people say, oh, Bante, you're like much more quiet and peaceful and happy looking than you have been. Right. So even though I'm in the middle of the city, this is a wonderful lesson actually, right? Because you can be in, you can be in the forest, you can be in a place that supposedly is the most conducive towards your practice and towards your serenity. And it's just not, right? And you can go to a place where you don't want to go. Like, I'm not a city person. I don't like cities. I wish to avoid cities at all costs, basically. I love the mountains and I love, the forest and things like that. But here I am in the city, in this with wonderful people and this wonderful experience, and my mind is nice and calm, and my meditation's been good, and everything's been good. So, your environment can play a role in your practice, but it doesn't have to either, right? Especially if you practice well, you've been practicing long enough, then you could be in the middle of Times Square and still sit down and meditate and have a nice peaceful meditation. Now, if I was in the typical city or town monastery, it would be a lot busier. Lots of monks, lots of activity, of course, it's COVID time, so it wouldn't be as busy. But since I'm literally the only person that resides in this building, every day, it's nice and quiet and peaceful. Is there anybody left? Anybody around? It says 8 people are watching, but I only see 1 person in participants. Maybe that just means that there's only 1 person who has a YouTube account left. Oh, there you go. All right. Okay. Well, there's about 15 minutes left. And we can continue with any kind of discussion. If there's any topic you'd like me to talk about, I can do that. If there's any questions, we can do that. And if there's nothing, if the meditation brought us all to a wonderful, peaceful place, then we can just end for the night. So we'll see what happens. I'll check the chat for a minute or two. Hello, Lactate Threshold. That's an interesting name. I haven't seen you type yet, so it's good to... I don't know, have we met before? Do I know you from somewhere? How does your solitude not devolve into loneliness? It's a good question. That's a very good question. Mostly because of my practice. My practice brought me to part of it is temperamental. Part of it is I've always been like, I grew up with 2 younger sisters. And so most of, I had friends in the neighborhood and stuff, but most of my time at home was spent by myself in the basement, trying to be away from my sisters, playing my Nintendo, So I've kind of grown, I've always had this tendency to like being by myself. Mostly in the beginning, it was because I was not a very social person, and I was, so there was a lot of that kind of stuff. So I kind of have a lot of habit time of being by myself. And being online with people helps, but mostly what happened to me was my practice brought me to a place where I didn't need anybody anymore. Romantically, socially, I could be by myself. And would like periods of loneliness arise? Sure. Yeah. Um, but they wouldn't be like something that was really horrible and really long lasting. Like when I would do my month-long seclusions where I would have no internet, no technology, no talking to anybody, basically no seeing anybody except for when I went and got my food. Every once in a while I'd have kind of a tinge, a pang of wanting to be able to be around somebody and talk to them, but that would pass. And then the joy of solitude would come back. Right? So it's something that the practice kind of builds, right? You basically become your own best friend, right? You become comfortable being by yourself, right? You don't need anybody else to kind of distract you or to take time or anything like that. You become comfortable being by yourself. For some it might take a little bit longer than others. It might seem like I'm a fairly extroverted person, and I am to an extent. Even in lay life, I was, the last half of my lay life, I was extroverted. But for most of my, mostly I've been an introvert. And there's this part of me, like at Bhavana, when people would come and there'd be a retreat, I'd love to meet all the people who came for the retreat and to spend the week with them and talk to them and help them with their issues and be with them in meditation and silent meditation for a week. That was great. But then by the end of the week and everybody left, I was like, oh, I'm so happy everybody left. Even though we were in silence for a week, the place wasn't really quiet, right? Then everybody leaves and then there's a dead silence. It's so nice to not be around people, right? So I think that's to understand that the loneliness is going to arise, but it won't last forever. It'll cease, right? To be able to be comfortable by yourself in solitude is something that develops with the practice. It's also something that you can develop, right? You can go into the woods and go to just spend more time by yourself. At first, it's going to be really agitated, and you'd be like, "What's on my phone? Who's saying something on Facebook or whatever?" Like all these, "What's on this? What's this?" Right? But the more you do it, the more you're like, "Oh, wow, this is kind of nice. My mind is so nice and quiet and peaceful. I like this. I want to escape people more often. Maybe I want to go to the monastery more. I want to go to more retreats." Right? It's something that is fearful and sorrowful, something that is joyful, right? And that takes time and practice and development. Ninja kindness. Being a generosity ninja. Yeah, that's funny, John. You brought that. That's interesting. It says that you've been listening to me a while, that you know something like that. The generosity ninja. I don't know. Are there Kickstarters or whatever? Not Kickstarters. GoFundMe's or whatever. Maybe that you can look into helping somebody. Is there an older person who is stuck in their house and maybe they don't have people visit them a lot? Maybe, like, I don't know, send them in Amazon like some kind of a food or something, right? Some kind of a little gift for them. The internet has all kinds of interesting ways to practice generosity towards somebody. And then in December, you can practice Secret Santa. I don't know, to somebody. Maybe your office, you're not going to be in, everything's going to be locked down. But I don't know. You can do secret Buddha, Secret Santa, whatever. Send a secret gift to somebody. Ah, very good. Be more says, I baked a pie for an old man across the street. Yeah, having respect and taking care of our elderly is something that in America we're really poor at, unfortunately. The more we can help and support our elderly, the better. What does that say about us, right? Because when we get there, we're going to be screwed. It's like, oh man, I wish people would come visit me or come help me or come do this or that. No, but no, I'm just going to sit here just waiting to die, right? No, that's not good. Buddha is very clear in the suttas, like Sigalovada Sutta, things about talking about taking care of your parents, your elderly parents, taking care of your elderly, relatives, things like that. That's part of Buddhist practice, right? Being supportive and taking care of relatives. I have an 80-year-old neighbor that keeps coming by when they shouldn't. Yeah, isn't that the thing, right? Like, it's very rare that you get to choose a good time for an interaction like that to happen. Right? And so when it's not at a good time, a time we dislike, it's so much easier to like just be agitated and brush them off and things like that, right? But that's good practice. That's just, oh, okay, well, maybe this wouldn't have been the time I chose. Maybe I have to do X, Y, and Z, but maybe I can spare 5 or 10 minutes, right? And then maybe they want to keep talking, right? 5 or 10 minutes is not enough. But then maybe you have to say, hey, listen, such and such. Let's set up a time that I'll come visit. Right. And so then once they do, oh, okay, then they're not going to keep coming by because they know like you're going to come by tomorrow at 3 or whatever. Right. They'll say, okay. And so you can explain, this time I'm usually busy with, doing my work online or whatever. But let's visit it. Visit it this time, right? So this way you don't create a negative interaction. You keep it short, and then you give them a future thing to look forward to, right? Okay, tomorrow or in 3 days, I'll come visit at this time. Ah, I see. Well, nobody ever said dealing with old people is easy. Especially because, right, you're practicing so you'll be relatively okay when you're older, right? We don't like to think about getting older. And so when we see an older person, what are they? Those of you who know what's an older person, you've heard, maybe some of you who've been listening to me talk forever, you know exactly where I'm going with this. What is an old person? Do you know what an old person is? in terms of Buddhism, an old person, a sick person, a dead person. All right, I don't think we have any old OG. No, they're divine messengers. Right? An old person, a sick person, a dead person. That is a divine messenger. Meaning they are sites that we will see that we should learn from, learn about, investigate, understand, not to avoid. Right? Because if we avoid the divine messengers, then we will act skillfully. All right, go wife. Yeah. The divine messengers are there for us, right? They are signs. So an old person is a divine messenger, right? An old person, like you said, like will be us. Will be that. Just as the Buddha say in the sutta, the delicate sutta, where he says, it would not be proper for me who is subject to old age, to be disgusted or annoyed or agitated by somebody who is old, because I too am subject to that. Right? You reflect, oh, I'm going to be there. If I'm quote unquote lucky, I'm going to live that long. Right? And how would I feel if I was this way, if somebody talked to me this way, or treated me this way, right? All right, friends. We are at 1 hour, 58 minutes, and 43 seconds. I think that's a. Oh yeah. When I was what, 23 or 24, I was substitute teaching. And man, the 15 and 16-year-olds thought I was older than the hills. Oh, you're so old. You're 24, 25. Yeah, that's how it goes. And when you're in your 20s, you look at 60 and you think, wow, that's old. And then you start to get to 40 and you're like, oh, wait, 60 is only like 20 years from now. That's not that old. That's the way it goes. All right, friends. Then let's do dedication of merits. Let me get that out. All right. So in this, all of the great meritorious karma that we've developed in these 2 hours of Dhammapalooza, let us share this meritorious karma with all of our relatives and all beings. And may we say, when we think about, when I do this chant, think about the words, and wish that this will be the case, right? So, may the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we've thus acquired, for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, friends. Sukhihotu, may you be happy. Practice well and be well. So I'll be doing, as long as I'm in a place that has internet, I'll be doing Dhammapalooza and allows it, obviously. I'll be doing Dhammapalooza every Monday, 8 o'clock, same time, same place. Well, maybe not the same place, but same time, wherever I'm at. I've also been doing every morning at 8 o'clock. I do essentially. I'm recording. I'm going live with what is essentially the morning monastery experience. Except for I do it at 8 o'clock instead of when normally monasteries do it at 5 or 6. Right. So this is every morning at 8 o'clock on YouTube Live. I do precepts. So if you want to like daily renew your 5 precepts, right, you can do that. I do some basic chanting that you can chant along with at home if you like. And then I do what's called the thought of the day. So at Bhavana, every day, when the monks take turns going through the book, and we take it line by line or paragraph by paragraph, we read the Pali and then the English, and then we give a short Dhamma talk, like 5 minutes, 6 minutes, about whatever the topic is for that day, depending on what we're reading. Right. So that's basically what I'm doing now from 8 to 8:30 every morning, except for Sundays. So you can go to this, youtube.com/student of the path/live every morning at 8, except for Sunday, and you can join. And that's about it. So friends, until next time, practice well and be well.